With the ending of chapter 323, BLUELOCK's match against Nigeria is reaching its end, with Onazi facing off against Aiku for the final play. Now, many people have their predictions for this next chapter. Some say that Onazi will score, some say that Aiku will stop him, that Kuso or even Isagi will actually score, and many other different theories. But I have a theory that I have not seen mentioned anywhere else on the internet that I actually think is the most likely prediction for this next chapter. That being the action of Onazi both succeeding and failing all in a single play. This video is made in hindsight, however, because I don't know the events of chapter 324, so if that chapter releases and this video is wrong, then whoops. Before I get into my prediction though, if you have not read chapter 323 of the BLUELOCK manga, then I would suggest you click off this video now if you wish to not be spoiled. Well, to make a long story short here and not beat around the bush, what exactly do I think is going to happen? I believe that in the next chapter, Onazi will match up against Aiku, beat him in a 1v1 matchup, and then get stopped by Isagi, concluding the Nigeria game with this final play. Now, there are a lot of different factors and tons of different pieces of evidence which help contribute to this theory, so pay attention and stick with me because it's going to be a good one. In this final matchup, I believe that it is going to be a turning point for Onazi's ego and Aiku's own talent. For Onazi though, he is who I really want to focus on for this theory. His ambition and desire to become the best in the world and discover his own true curiosity for himself is pushing him towards a new evolution, which in his mind, he will achieve by scoring this goal and beating Aiku. And it's very important for this evolution that I believe that Onazi will awaken Predator Eye. Considering that Onazi is the closest to relative BLUELOCKer level, and we haven't seen any kind of vision ability from the Nigerian team, I feel like a Predator Eye awakening is fairly likely. Not to mention, Onazi, through the backstory and dialogue with him during this game, he really seems to present as a restrictive ego type, which is the exact requirement for someone to awaken Predator Eye. Well, what kind of restrictive type egoist in particular? Well, he shares a lot of similar qualities with Kaiser. He can only awaken his true ego when he's faced with losing everything. However, due to his dreams of repaying his family back for saving him from loneliness, he hasn't had the motivation or drive to break through this restriction. However, given the current circumstances, including Kuso's final pass to Onazi in this game, I believe that he could reach that state. Now, when it comes to the actual matchup, I do believe that Onazi will win, not just because of skill, but because of narrative kind of backing this point. And I think he's going to be using Predator Eye to his advantage in this matchup. When we see Onazi perform at earlier points in the game, his greatest strength seems to be his aerial matchups, being able to pass through Aiku's pressure in chapter 313, and in chapter 317, he was able to shoot while being pressed again by Isagi and Aiku. So when it comes to precision or just shooting through tight gaps, Onazi is already very skilled in this area, which, funny enough, is one of the utilities of Predator Eye, which we can see used by Kaiser. So when it comes to the matchup against Aiku, it's fairly likely that Onazi would use it to make his precision even more deadly, which would be needed against BLUELOCK's best defender, who is also using Metavision, as we see at the end of the chapter. Along with Kuso telling Onazi to finish this game off with a single shot, it's kind of implied that this next action is going to be the biggest and best that we've seen from Onazi. So awakening an ability like Predator Eye to seal the deal is kind of perfect. But now that we've established that Onazi can awaken Predator Eye and that he will awaken it during this next chapter, we might as well continue. I believe that this awakening of Predator Eye and the usage of it is actually what is going to lead Onazi to failure. When it comes to Predator Eye, while it does enhance your focus on a target and deadliness as a shooter, it comes with one large downside. That downside being the restriction of your vision and the induction of tunnel vision. Predator Eye functions almost in the opposite way to Metavision, where as opposed to expanding your vision to focus on the whole pitch, Predator Eye narrows it and restricts it to one target to help with analysis on a specific task, target, or goal. There are moments where players with Predator Eye have been able to use their peripheral vision or predict plays from outside their standard scope of vision, like Burū and Isagi in chapter 226, but this incident from Burū is more of him just predicting that Isagi would show up, as opposed to using his vision outside his standard range of sight. Now, with this big downside, Onazi would be vulnerable to multi-stage defensive attacks, like Isagi coming in to stop him after he beats Aiku here. Onazi is sparking an evolution here. He wants to get better, and right now, he sees Aiku as his challenge, and so by beating Aiku, he can reach a level close to Isagi, or at least an ego relative to him in understanding. So once Onazi beats Aiku, he will be so hyper fixated on this new evolution and the fact that he just beat Aiku and now understands the curiosity within himself that he will be vulnerable to an attack by Isagi. There is another factor that could also distract Onazi from Isagi coming in to intervene, that being Gagamaru. In chapter 317, Gagamaru easily stopped what would have been Onazi's awakening for the final play of the first half. Gagamaru being another obstacle for Onazi would be even more incentive for him to awaken Predator Eye. Onazi's last shot was stated by Gagamaru to be too easy to block, even easier than his standard baseball training by Ego. Meaning if Onazi wants to beat Gagamaru, he has to send a shot that surpasses his previous one. And based on Onazi's talents, the easiest way for him to do this would be for him to use Predator Eye to take a shot that is so precise and goes to a location or space in the net that Gagamaru just cannot reach. But now that we've covered that, how exactly do I see Isagi coming in to stop the shot? In chapter 223, as Kuso is making his way up the pitch, we see Onazi running behind everyone, but with Isagi using his metavision nearby him. And with Isagi saying that he wants to challenge Nigeria, having them surpass his brain and BLUELOCK's own adaptation, it wouldn't not make sense for him to involve himself in this play. Basically saying Isagi would 100% be involved in this next action. Okay, but then how would Isagi understand how Onazi is going to shoot and where he's going to shoot? Well, in the same way he did for Chris Prince's shot in the Manchan City match. Isagi is unable to read the course of the ball, but instead he can sense the most dangerous area of the net. This is what he did against Manchan, and I almost can guarantee you that he could do it again here. But this is all just a theory. I mean, anything could happen, so what evidence do I have to say that this prediction is the most accurate one I could give? Well, there are several elements of it that lead into this prediction, starting with the title of the next chapter. With the title of the next chapter being Afterglow, this alone gives several possible justifications for this theory. See, afterglow is defined as the light that covers the sky after the sun sets across the horizon. Now, you may be wondering how this description and definition applies itself to the BLUELOCK story, but it's actually very symbolic of Aiku and Onazi here. Onazi has been continuously described as a shining hope, and his nickname is literally Luminous Onazi. In a way, Onazi is essentially the sun to his team and to those around him. And for Aiku, he's been labeled as the last line of defense, or in other words, the final wall. For this symbolic action, if Onazi were to get past Aiku here, the shining light of hope would surpass the final wall, almost like the sun setting over the horizon. And once that happens, an afterglow is cast over the sky, or in this circumstance, an afterglow would be cast over the pitch. But there's also the possibility that the word afterglow is actually throwing us off here and is actually supposed to be afterglow, being two words combined into one here. Nomura and Kaneshiro do this often in the story, specifically in chapter 290, for example, titled Blue Bad Boy. Now, many people were predicting it to be a title in reference to Rin, which the chapter was majority Rin-centered. But the Blue Bad Boy in this instance was related to Kaiser, and people didn't really pick up on that until this chapter had released. So there is a possibility that this title could be in reference to something entirely different. Now, if it is afterglow being two separate words, it could relate to an event that happens after Onazi beats Aiku, or after the glow, which in this case would be Isagi coming in to stop him, kind of mirroring Kaiser and Isagi's play against Rin at the end of the PXG game, except it's now Isagi in the place of Kaiser. Kaiser at the beginning of the NEL was stated to be the embodiment of what Isagi's true style and best style can be, and at the end of the PXG game, we literally saw Isagi take on Kaiser's appearance using his aura manifestation to disguise himself. So him embodying Kaiser's role in that previous action right here is kind of pushing that ideology forward even more. However, there is still a third possibility as to what afterglow could be referring to. That being the act of basking in the afterglow, which is also called basking in your victory. There are several instances in the series where characters bask in the afterglow of their victories, such as Isagi to Nico in the first selection, but you also have Nagi basking in the afterglow of defeating Isagi in the Manshan City game. There's always the possibility that the symbolism of basking in the afterglow could be brought over to this game. Onazi could be caught basking in the afterglow of his victory over Aiku, or could believe he is victorious due to his tunnel vision on his specific evolution, at which point Isagi would come over and stop him. This prediction also really aligns well with what Isagi talked to Aiku about at the beginning of this chapter. He's challenging Onazi and Aiku, testing Onazi's evolution against Isagi and Blue Lock's own adaptation. By stopping Onazi here, he's also embodying another philosophy of the Blue Lock series, that being satisfaction. At the end of the NEL, we learned that the reason for Nagi's defeat was the fact that he was satisfied with his goal of defeating Isagi. Onazi, in this moment after beating Aiku, could hesitate due to his satisfaction and near-mindedness towards what it means to evolve, getting stopped by Isagi, someone who continues to evolve and grow stronger with every single game. I mean, like Aiku said, a new egoist is here, and Isagi basically treats Nigeria as these fledgling chicks who don't know the scope of what it means to be unsatisfied or to have an ego. I mean, a couple chapters ago, he literally compared them to children after watching a movie. Stopping Onazi here would push him to grow stronger and not to be satisfied with a single goal, but rather to continue to adapt, evolve, and play for much more. This action of Isagi stopping Onazi also ties into the closing tagline of chapter 323. The closing tagline of the chapter isn't mentioned in the English translation, but in the Japanese, the words "a future yet unseen" are referenced for the events of the next chapter. Now, this hints towards Onazi having Predator Eye and therefore a narrow vision because he's so hyperfixated on his direct evolution that he isn't prepared for Isagi to come in and stop him, but also Isagi, the player with vision that transcends a third-dimensional view and is literally testing Nigeria against his ability to see and adapt. A future yet unseen is a situation to everyone on the pitch except for Isagi, who from his experience in the PXG game has a vision that surpasses even what those with metavision are able to see and predict. I mean, to call to it again, Isagi was so close to Onazi when we saw him in chapter 223, so there is always the possibility that Isagi is tracking Onazi, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. If you thought I was done, you guys gotta lock in and listen, because there is even more evidence which supports this theory for chapter 324. That being Isagi's own training from Ego and his new mentality for soccer. Starting with his training, Isagi was taught by Ego during the 2 weeks away from Blue Lock about the concept of game-changing moments. Through this, Isagi doesn't just focus on the situations that result in goals, but plays that completely alter and change the tempo of the game, such as interceptions, passes, or player awakenings. Isagi throughout this game has been pivotal when it relates to game-changing moments, such as his press with Ryo that resulted in Karasu stealing the ball from Nigeria, as well as his one-touch pass to Bachara, which led to the opening goal for Blue Lock. And from what it seems, Isagi has learned to create his own game-changing moments as opposed to just acting upon the ones that he can see and understand. Aiku at the beginning of the chapter asked Isagi why he was stoking Nigeria's ego despite them being crushed, and Isagi straight up said that it was for his own benefit so he could experience a soccer that he has never seen before. And by tasking Aiku with holding the backline, he's creating a circumstance where Onazi's awakening and Aiku's determination will become the crux of the game's flow. This ties into Isagi's own personal desires and needs as a striker, wanting to experience a new kind of soccer for himself. By creating this man-made game-changing moment, he's essentially using Aiku and Onazi as tools for his own selfish, personal benefit and desires. This calls to his ego that he developed during the PXG game, where he discovered the effectiveness of using himself as a tool for victory. Isagi doesn't concern himself with beating any kind of character in particular anymore like he did with Kaiser during the Manshan City game. He only wants to explore, learn, and participate in new kinds of soccer, using himself as a tool in order to achieve that. And at this moment, he's using Aiku and Onazi as his tools to reach this goal. He's really embodying the mentality that Noa had, using Isagi and Kaiser as tools for his own respective evolution. Now, I know I'm not the only person who has said this before, but I do believe that Isagi's ego is going to be the downfall of him at some point, viewing himself and others as tools for a respective victory. But if my prediction is correct, this new kind of ego is going to be put on full display in this next chapter. During his trip to Spain and conversation with Bunny, Isagi simply wants to learn and experience new kinds of soccer, and from the PXG game, he simply wants to win, using himself and anyone as a tool for victory in the process. Plus, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but there was something a little bit weird about Isagi's dialogue at the beginning of this chapter. When speaking to Aiku about Nigeria scoring, he doesn't seem to care if they score because he knows that they will still win. That almost sounds like he's satisfied with those results, and Isagi isn't the kind of player to become satisfied, which is exactly why I think Isagi will act here. Isagi isn't the kind of striker who will settle for the win. He's the kind of player who will give his all until the last second to win at all costs. And by stopping Onazi, he will be able to kill two birds with one stone. He'll be able to get to experience a new kind of soccer using Aiku and Onazi as tools to reach that, but he'll also be embodying unsatisfaction, winning at all costs, giving his 150% no matter what. I truly think that out of any other possible prediction for this next chapter, this one is by far the most likely. But that was just my theory as to how the events of Blue Lock chapter 324 will lead to Onazi succeeding and also failing, and Blue Lock achieving victory all in one single action. This is the first video I've done in a very long while that was just fully dedicated to a chapter prediction and theory, and I really had a lot of fun making it. But aside from that, I hope you guys did enjoy this video and will continue to enjoy it in the future. I also want to leave a reminder to join my Discord server called the Neo Egoist Geeks to become an even closer part of our community, and the link to it is down below in the description. As for the question of the video, what are your predictions for the events of Blue Lock chapter 324? Leave me your thoughts and theories down below in the comment section. Like always, I've been Arrow. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe to see more awesome Blue Lock content like this, and I'll see you all in the next one.